the most important thing in terms of generative search is to have organic content. So, content that's really real, that wasn't actually AI generated, that's within your control.
Welcome to another episode of the e-commerce toolbox expert's perspective. Joining us today all the way over from Michigan, we got Jane Smith, who's the VP of marketing at Merrell. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Awesome. Today is going to be all about how heritage outdoor brands can really blend some of their rich history, storytelling, sustainability into modern marketing. But I always like to learn a bit more about your journey and how you ended up in your role. So do you mind giving us a bit of a brief on your career journey?
Yeah, for sure. I am truthfully one of the digital dinosaurs out there. I was really lucky because a lot of people my age, I'm 50 years old, um, never were able to practitioner through the digital space. So typically when people were my age were starting out, it was still very much a print, radio, television world out there. But I happened to be in Seattle during the dot-com boom in the late 90s, which was a really exciting time, and started working in digital media straight out of college. So I've really grown up in the business and seen it change and evolve so greatly. It's been pretty crazy. So I started out there. I worked also in Chicago and Washington, D.C., and met my husband and moved over to London. So was able to work both in London and Paris globally, which was amazing. And really spent most of my career on the agency side. And then had a son and was beckoned back to beautiful West Michigan, where the land of free childcare and Lake Michigan. And we decided to stay here and raise our family. And my husband and I actually started the digital arm at a small agency out in Holland, Michigan, fairly painless advertising. And after that, I got into my 40s and I thought I was looking for a new challenge, and going client side was a really exciting thing to do, bring all that knowledge. So I started at Wolverine, first at Cat Footwear, and made my way over to Merrell about 5 years ago.
Very cool. Very interesting career journey. Curious, you already kind of alluded to marketing changing a lot in the last 10 to 20 years. You've mentioned before that community is one of the best brand plays in today's marketing. What are some of your experiences or insights that kind of led you to believe that?
Yeah, like I just told you, really spending my whole career mapping through the digital landscape, there's just such an overabundance of apps and channels and ways to reach consumers, and it continues to grow all the time. But I still think that word of mouth is the strongest impression. And I see it in my teenage children, in my parents and myself. If I see a video of someone trying something or doing something, it's going to catch my interest and probably, make me dive a little deeper, do a little bit more research. But when someone I trust tells me something, I'm in. And I think that's really intergenerational. I think it's really important, and I hope that never really changes.
Very cool. One of the next changes that may or may not be coming down the pipe is AI-powered search. Where a lot of executives that I speak with are talking about that. Some people say, "Hey, we're seeing the traffic numbers from LLMs on our website explode." Others are saying that it's not that serious. I'm curious from your perspective, what's the next generation? TikTok shops, AI-powered search. What are the next kind of marketing channels that are coming to life in your opinion?
Yeah, I was just at Google offices this week, actually, talking about this in great detail. And we were in a session talking specifically about AI search with a lot of different companies. And someone asked, looking at Gemini result, our search result is not even showing up anymore. And really the response was, that's just the way that the world's going to be now. I mean, there's not really much you can do about it. From that perspective of that happening, to stop that from happening, I think one thing that we really recognize, which is kind of ironic, is that the most important thing in terms of generative search is to have organic content. So, content that's really real, that wasn't actually AI generated, that's within your control. And then also getting picked up in different communities, back to community. So on Reddit or different blogs where people are talking about you, in the press when people are writing about you. And that's what's actually continuing to push that AI search result. So I just think it's really important for companies out there to spend the time and resource to actually develop interesting and connective content with their communities. So I think that's a trend that's gonna, even though AI obviously very important, in order to show up, you have to be original and true to the brand. And yeah, TikTok shop and Instagram shop and purchasing through social media. Yes, I do worry a lot about different security concerns when it comes to that kind of shopping and all the different sorts of phishing and scams and rogue sellers that are out there. We have a big problem with that on social, that people think they're buying Merrell, but they're really not. So I just think it's really important to focus on your brand and your content and its equity.
As these channels grow, do you think collaborations will become more or less important? I know that you folks have done some collaborations maybe that you want to talk about. Like, do you kind of feel like that kind of starts to fold into the core strategy as well?
Absolutely. I think that for us, it's all about driving new audience and also brand heat, but really engaging and bringing in new audience. And that's always going to be something that every company and brand needs to do. Certainly, we want partners that align with our values. So we partnered with Jeep a couple of times. They're all about adventure and outdoor off road, which felt very connected. Parks Project is another partner of ours that focuses a lot of their energy on environmental action protection. So things that we're definitely passionate about, but they were also had audiences that, Jeep in particular is a massive audience, which much further reach in the US than our own. Parks Project has a really young, engaged audience. So always really important for brands to be out there and find partners that can bring in these new audience. Um, and no one can disagree. I think that getting outside and connecting is good for the soul. So there's so many great partners out there. We just want to find ones that surprise and delight our consumer.
Very cool. And when you're doing some of these collaborations, maybe some of them are brand, some of them are performance. Something that even we struggle with internally with our marketing leaders is what's brand, what's
Mm,
actually performance, how do you measure ROI? Is it the
yeah.
ones that miss performance ROI that now all of a sudden become brand ones? So like talk to us a bit about how you're thinking about that.
You know what's funny? The Jeep is a really good example because I'll take you through that one. We did two of them and they had very different outcomes. So the first Jeep collab that we did was on our core product, the Moab 3, which is that's the number one selling hiking boot in the world that everybody is aware of. And it was the Jeep Wrangler. So, or yeah, Wrangler. And it was so their, core outdoor off-road product. And the Rubicon, that's what it was. And the two were very well aligned. And then the content was very you wouldn't have been able to tell if it was a Jeep ad or a Merrell Moab 3 ad. It was like very seamless. And the audience was ripe for the picking from a male perspective because it was outdoor, leaned a little bit male. All the demographics were really aligned. And it was a huge success. It was a full price product. And we were supposed to launch it in in September, but it was during all of the union battles that were happening. So we ended up launching this full price expensive product right in the middle of holiday promotional period. But it worked. It was great. It was a gifting opportunity. People were really excited about it. It really ignited the audiences. So that was great. The next iteration, we decided that we wanted to do something a little bit different and push it in a different direction. And so we took our Moab 2, which is our more athletic, kind of younger feeling shoe. Um, and the color, we aligned it with an electric Jeep. So one of their newer, more interesting products. But it didn't really work. So that first time around, It was very brand building, also sold through a ton of product really quickly. The second time around, the shoes were very bright. It was on a newer style. It didn't feel totally core audience. And same with the Jeep. It was like new colors, very bright color, a little bit, polarizing to a Jeep consumer. And so it was, it didn't really work. So it's interesting how sometimes the sweet spot is when you can drive product and really drive brand and new consumer. And then sometimes it's just the decisions didn't get you where you needed to be. So both can happen.
Very cool. And one of the topics I typically talk to with marketing executives is they always want to grow past their current geography, right? They want to
Yeah.
increase their addressable market. You need to grow it each year. For you guys, maybe that looks like going global, going into new markets. How have you thought about basically scaling into new markets? Do you need like ambassadors? Do you need to do regionalized offices? Because I would assume, I mean, I'm no expert, but like maybe the marketing in Scandinavia looks a bit different than the US, and the US and the UK could look similar, but not, I don't know, Portugal. I'm making all these things
Yeah.
up, but I'm curious about how you think about them as you look to expand into new markets.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we have a global business when we're developing content and marketing plans. Obviously, we really have to take into consideration all of our global partners. And even from everything from where we shoot a product. So we have to make sure that the city and or the park doesn't look too American centric. We make sure that we shoot in different locations around the world to so that it can feel more evergreen to all of our regional offices. So from a planning perspective, we get really tight with the local marketing teams and make sure that we're all staying really connected through the process. I think it gets very difficult, as you just said, when you're in Europe and you have 27 different markets that you're managing just within that region. It's overwhelming. Same with Asia, these huge markets. So one thing that we've really focused on in the past couple of years is a key city strategy. So we have key cities within Europe, Paris and London were the first two. In Asia was Tokyo and South Korea, and in the US and New York. So really this came from, it really goes back to just CPG marketing. So CPG would pick key cities, and then whenever they would launch a new Pringles product or a new Gatorade flavor, they would be in Chicago. So it would always launch first in Chicago. They would reach out to the consumer first in Chicago and they would see, is it resonating or not, and then build it from there. So we've taken somewhat of a similar approach, obviously a little bit different than a CPG company, but really focusing a lot of energy in these key markets. And then it also creates this global connection. So if you're someone who travels between different continents, you tend to actually fly through or go through these regional key cities, and you're seeing this sort of through line and red thread of the brand around the world. So that's been something that's really been beneficial for us over the last couple of years.
And with certain trends like Gorpcore coming up, I know it's not relatively new. It's potentially popping off. I'm curious, like how do you look at those things? Do you think that it's your job to start those trends? Do you think it's your job to really latch onto them when they come? Curious about how you talk about those things in the boardroom.
Yeah, Gorpcore's one, it's interesting because, we met with one agency recently that said it's still a trend and one that said it's now dead, so it's like it's really has lived its life since about 2019 when it started kind of bubbling up, and then when people went crazy in the outdoors during COVID. Um, we have actually a tiered strategy. So within the Merrell universe, we have our one TRL line that you can find on Merrell.com and also in certain kind of tier zero retail establishments in bigger metropolitan areas. And that is it takes a lot of our heritage styles, but then flips them into a more progressive, futuristic kind of look and feel using the best technology, the best materials. They look a little bit like, if I would wear them, then they'd be doing something wrong. Let's just put it that way. And so, and the price point's higher, but it's kind of like a test lab for us. So really kind of really getting ahead of trend, or even if we see something just starting to bubble up, trying to break in and see if it's something that will really take off that we should then grab into our mainline product. So our mainline product, I would say we're more trend, on trend versus leading trend. And that's really aligns with our consumer target as well, which we call the experience seeker, that they are more a trend follow type of audience. So basically would kind of start at one tier, I'll see if it takes off. And then if it does, and we see it really start to grow, then we'll bring it down into the main line.
How do you connect the dots between some of the in-person experiences stuff? Earlier in the podcast, you'd mentioned that seeing the product or seeing someone with the product is like high trust and kind of part of your buying cycle. How are you connecting the dots between your offline events, retail
Yeah.
partners, looping it back to your digital channels? Yeah, curious about how you're thinking about that.
It's honestly, it's not been easy and it's been a real learning experience. I think for us in particular, we have three big categories that we play in: hike, trail run, and casual, and kind of casual after sport. And they've all taken a journey over the past 5 years in particular. As you can imagine, in 2020, hike really started to take off. And so there was a lot of energy there. Trail run over the past couple years has really been a place that we put a lot of energy. And it's been, we kind of noticed looking back, it was really difficult to create that red thread between all of the communications and category campaigns that we had running. And as the other marketers out there know, the reach and frequency that you need in such a crowded marketplace right now, in both digital and apparel and footwear, it's so important. And if you're showing up differently, then it's diminishing the value of the impression each time. So we've really, over the past year, tried to kind of build that commonality. We have a brand campaign launching in 2026 that we're really excited about, that's really going to cover everything, which is certainly going to be the connective tissue from an outreach perspective. I think in terms of in person, we know that when people get our shoes on their feet, it's really beneficial to us. They're incredibly comfortable. They're incredibly lightweight, especially in a trail run and hiking space where shoes can still feel a little bit clunky and uncomfortable. It's really fantastic when we're able to do that. And we, again, kind of back to our key city approach, we'll pick different events within the cities to kind of get our ground game there and make sure that we had, hiking clubs that we developed all over the world globally, where we would get hiking clubs and groups out to get our shoes on their feet and just make sure that we're out there sending a consistent message throughout all these global key cities as we try to find new consumers.
Yeah, and you'd flagged this in your previous answer, but obviously maintaining brand consistency across the channels, D2C, wholesale, specialty retailers, and then you layer in the complexity of different geos. Like, is that something you actively have to work on as a strategy? Is that like consuming a lot of your bandwidth? Is that one of
Oh, yeah.
the top things that you kind of think about? Because it's, yeah, candidly from outside in, it seems probably pretty hard to manage when you let the genie out of the bottle, but I'm curious about how you're approaching it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think we've made it a little bit harder on ourselves than we needed to be honest. I think sometimes when you try to be everything to everyone, then you end up being nothing to no one. So I think, instead of kind of chasing our own tail, really looking across all of our campaigns and categories and product and consumer and honing in on back to community. We know that really connecting with our community with the brand is the most important thing. And if you do that and you sell the brand to your community, they'll do a lot of the work for you themselves. So I think that's what we're really focused on for 2026, is really unifying that brand message and getting that out there and working within the different niche interests of our communities and kind of igniting them to help us get the word out there, which is really to get people outside. That's what we're really trying to do in whatever way that looks like to them.
Very cool. And now that you're coming up on 5-ish years on the brand
Mm.
side, what are some of your biggest learnings from going from agency side over to a heritage brand? And yeah, what are some of your biggest learnings been in your role?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. One thing I really loved about coming onto the corporate side of things versus the agency side is that the people that you work with and everyone at the company has one unified vision and vision for the organization, and you're all very connected. So this whole idea of getting people outside is something that truthfully, and I know I'm sure this can come across sometimes disingenuous, drinking the Kool-Aid, but truthfully, everyone at Merrell really feels that within their bones. We really believe in the importance and the, what the outside can do for people, especially in this world right now where it feels very anxiety ridden. So just like working within one brand with this one purpose has been very exciting to me and feels very different from an agency perspective, where you're kind of working across a ton of different companies and brands and trying to build them all and kind of weave your way in to their brand voice and vision. And then also, I would say, aside from that, it's also, I thought, at first, am I going to get bored? Like I'm used to working in all these different brands and with all these different people. And what's also been really exciting about working at a heritage brand is it's constantly changing. And even the categories that I was telling you about, it's almost like we have 3 different clients because there's different people working on different areas of the brand, plus not even mentioning, the brand purpose group and all of that. So I think working in everyone building and working towards one true brand voice and vision and one true purpose, and really truthfully feeling that makes all the difference. We had this really cool activation this past year called Out of Office. And one thing that we learned was an insight was consumers really want to know the people behind the brand within the social media landscape and want to see, the people behind the people that are actually doing the posting or putting the content out there. And we had 4 marketers that were decided to run a 50K race in Sonoma in California. So it was a no joke race, like big deal. And we decided to turn it into a series. And so we followed them as they were training for this event. And these were just 4 kind of, normal people. These weren't athletes or people that were out there on the race circuit. And so for months we followed them, and then we went out to Sonoma and filmed them where they were running the race. And it was very dramatic. One person broke their ankle and couldn't finish the race. And one person, I know, totally broke down. The woman that was of the 4, the only woman won. She came in first, the first woman. So it was like all this, it was very cool. And I think it was just showing that we really live the brand. We believe in the brand and we believe in the product that we're selling.
It's a really cool campaign, actually. I love it. Well, Jane, this has been phenomenal. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and share with us your wisdom. So we very much appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was great to meet you. Thanks so much.
The e-commerce toolbox Expert Perspectives is brought to you by Noibu. To find out more about Noibu and how we can help you debug your e-commerce site and rocket your revenue, visit www.noibu.com. That's Noibu.com. And then make sure to search for the e-commerce toolbox Expert Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Noibu, thanks for listening.